Behind the luxurious facade of the Harrison Medical and Legal Business Group, a silent figure reappeared after months away from the spotlight. Margaret Harrison, the matriarch of the traditional Harrison family and the chairwoman of the company's board, was back in Charleston, South Carolina. During her absence, Margaret had deeply reflected on the future of her grandson, Liam Harrison, the direct heir of the conglomerate that combined medical and legal services. Liam was brilliant, reserved, and extremely selective about who he allowed near him. Few employees even knew what he looked like, which made him an almost legendary figure within the company. But Margaret was not there for a simple visit. This time, she had a plan, and it involved disguises, silence, and an unusual quest. Determined to observe the heart of the company away from flattering gazes, Margaret dressed as a cleaning lady. Loose pants, a faded t-shirt, a cap, and an old scratched wristwatch. No one would recognize her. Her goal was clear: to see with her own eyes who truly worked with integrity, and above all, to look for someone worthy of loving her grandson, not for his fortune, but for who he was. When she entered the building, she barely received any stares. To most, she was just another quiet janitor, a shadow among desks and corridors. However, a group of legal department employees soon noticed her presence, and not in a kind way. "Who let this woman in here?" whispered an assistant with an expression of disgust. "Look at that watch. Does she think she's rich with that fake thing?" mocked another, laughing loud enough to draw attention. They laughed and whispered as if they were in high school, pointing at Margaret with disdain. Margaret remained silent, slowly cleaning a counter and observing. When one of the women approached and insinuated that she was there trying to mingle with the rich, Margaret calmly replied, "It's just an old watch, dear. Why does that bother you so much?" The remark caused a discreet shove, and she almost lost her balance. But before the situation escalated, a firm voice cut through the air like a razor. "Enough!" The voice belonged to a young lawyer named Elena Brooks. With intense eyes and impeccable posture, Elena strode down the hallway like a storm. "Don't you all have nothing better to do than attack a cleaning lady?" she said, arms crossed and chin raised. Nervous giggles ensued, but none of them replied. One scoffed, "Look who's talking, Miss, single and self-righteous," Elena firmly retorted. "I ended my last relationship because he was a liar. And liars I do not tolerate. That is called self-respect. You should try it." The hecklers retreated one by one, chagrined, while Margaret silently observed, a slight smile forming on her face. "This girl, she has guts. Maybe she's the only one who can see beyond appearances." That very same day, when the hallway bustle ceased and the employees finally returned to their tasks, Margaret decided to follow her intuition. There was something in Elena that touched her, a silent strength behind her firmness, as if the young woman had been shaped by scars she chose to hide. While pretending to clean the glass of a meeting room, Margaret watched her from afar, attentive to her delicate gestures and the meticulous concentration with which she scribbled notes on her documents. When the moment seemed right, she slowly approached, clearing her throat discreetly. "Excuse me, dear. May I bother you for a moment?" Elena looked up and her expression immediately softened. "Of course, ma'am. Do you need something?" Margaret smiled and slowly sat in front of her table like a lady tired after a day's work. "I just wanted to thank you. Not everyone would have done what you did today. It's not common to see someone defending a stranger with such firmness." Elena smiled, somewhat awkwardly. "It was nothing. I just can't stand injustice. I never have." There was a weight in her voice, something Margaret recognized, that pain that only one who has been humiliated understands. "Tell me something," Margaret continued, almost casually. "Are you married?" Elena laughed, surprised by the question, and shook her head. "No. And honestly, I think I'll remain that way for a while." Margaret feigned surprise, but her eyes sparkled. "Ah, a young woman as determined as you must have someone in mind." Elena sighed. "I used to. I thought I had found someone decent until I discovered that he was cheating on me, right at the office. I thought I was smart, but I was just another love-struck fool." Margaret said nothing immediately. She only looked deeply into the young woman's eyes. "You're not foolish, my dear. You were just brave enough to love someone who didn't know how to value you. But the world still holds surprises. I promise. That same afternoon, as Elena tried to regain her concentration, a new employee appeared in the corridor. He wore a light cotton shirt, simple pants, and carried an almost generic briefcase. He had striking features, a serene gaze, and a smile that revealed more courtesy than arrogance. His badge read, Liam S., Legal Research Intern. Elena caught a glimpse of him and was intrigued. There was something about that young man. He did not seem to fit into the competitive and theatrical energy of the office. When he introduced himself to the team, there were whispers and sideways glances. Another intern who won't last long, whispered one of the assistants. But Margaret, who had positioned herself discreetly near the reception, could barely contain her smile upon seeing her grandson entering with that humble demeanor. Ah, Liam, you still don't know, but your destiny is right here on this floor. What no one knew, not even Elena, was that Liam's arrival was no accident. Under Margaret's direct guidance, he had assumed the disguise of a common intern in order to genuinely understand the company's dynamics. Liam did not like flattery or alliances forged out of self-interest. He was reserved, observant, and steadfast in the values his grandmother had taught him. People show who they are when they think no one important is watching, she used to say, and he believed it with every fiber of his being. When he was assigned the mission to infiltrate the legal department to observe the team before taking command, Liam did not hesitate. But what he did not expect was to cross paths with a woman who would make him question all the certainties he held. Liam was discreetly assigned to work directly with Elena in the legal planning department, assisting her in a complex tax defense process for a foreign multinational. At first, Elena was apprehensive. She had already dealt with lazy or arrogant interns who saw her as nothing more than a basic employee. However, as the days passed, she realized that Liam was different. Always attentive, he asked precise questions, demonstrated an excellent grasp of technical details, and, above all, he listened with genuine interest. When she inquired about his education, he answered with a simple smile, I read a lot on my own. I like learning from people who really care about what they do. That answer unsettled her inwardly. The two began working side by side for hours, sharing coffees, confidences, and, over time, timid smiles. Margaret, always nearby with her cleaning cart, observed everything with attentive eyes and the soul of a strategist. Every shared laugh between them was like a piece fitting into her silent plan. She knew Liam's heart was opening, and she also knew that Elena was beginning to see in her intern something rare, a true kindness. But while the bond between them grew silently, the resentment of other employees also gained strength, especially from one of them, Vanessa Green, an ambitious lawyer who had already unsuccessfully tried to attract the attention of the higher-ups, and now saw in Elena a growing threat. The spark came when the office announced in a meeting that the legal department would be restructured and new leadership positions would be created. Vanessa, confident that she would be chosen, was furious when she learned that the leaders were eyeing Elena for her consistent performance. Of course she's going to do well. She's cozying up with the new intern to climb the ladder, she murmured loudly enough for half the room to hear. Concealed laughter echoed. Elena tried to ignore it but felt her throat tighten. Vanessa continued, Do you really think he's here by chance, Elena? You're being used. You just haven't realized it yet. Elena firmly replied, I'd rather trust someone who shows respect than people who step on others to feel superior. Days later, Vanessa returned to the assault, this time with something much more serious. A series of confidential documents had been accessed outside business hours and sent to an external email. The cybersecurity team had found logs under Elena's username. The allegation was made without warning, directly to the ethics committee. During a team meeting with all eyes on her, Vanessa stood up with a dossier in her hands. Ladies and gentlemen, I think everyone should know that we have a traitor among us, and I have proof. Elena stood frozen, blood draining from her face. The accusation fell like a bomb. I would never do that, she said, but her voice seemed small in comparison to the supposed evidence. Liam silently observed every detail with his heart ablaze. He knew that Elena would never do such a thing. But for now, his disguise as an intern prevented him from intervening directly. That afternoon, Margaret called Liam for a coffee outside the building, away from curious ears. "You need to do something, Liam. She's being destroyed." He nodded, his jaw tense. "I will, but I need to do it the right way. It's not yet time to reveal everything, but I'm going to protect her, even if that means confronting dirty people face to face." Margaret looked at him with firmness and pride. "This young lady. She is everything I wanted for you. And you know that." Liam did not reply. There was no need to. He had already made his decision. That night, after hours, Elena remained alone in the archives room, head resting between her hands. The silence of the building contrasted with the chaos in her mind. She relived with sorrow the public humiliation of that afternoon. Vanessa's words echoed like hammer blows. Even without concrete proof, the stain on her reputation was already beginning to spread through the corridors. Suspicious looks, hushed whispers, a suffocating sensation of injustice. Liam appeared shortly thereafter, carrying 2 coffees. Without saying a word, he handed one to her and sat beside her. For a while, they simply sat there, breathing together, until, in a soft voice, she asked, "Do you also think that I did that?" Liam took a few seconds to answer, staring into the bottom of his cup. "No, not for a second. And even if I had doubts, a person who stands up to defend a cleaning lady without knowing who she is wouldn't be capable of betraying their own team." Elena smiled, her eyes welling up. "That was before. Now it seems that no one remembers who I am." Liam leaned in, speaking more softly. "I remember." And for the first time, Elena saw vulnerability in his eyes. "Have you ever felt as if the whole world had decided to doubt you at the same time?" she asked. Liam nodded. "When I was a teenager, my parents died in a car accident, and suddenly everyone started looking at me as if I were broken. They treated me with pity, as if I were incapable of going on alone. I hated that. I wanted to disappear." Elena looked at him in surprise. That explained a lot. The connection between them deepened. Later that same week, Liam invited her for a discreet outing after work. They went to a hidden cafe in the historic downtown, where they talked for hours about losses, fears, silent victories, and invisible scars. Liam opened up a bit more about his upbringing with his grandmother, without mentioning his true identity. "She means everything to me. A woman tough on the outside, but with a heart that no one truly knows." Elena smiled, saying that Margaret reminded her of the mother she lost at 15, a firm woman who worked as a bus driver and taught her daughter to never lower her head before those who thought themselves superior. The night ended with a tight, long embrace, the kind that says more than any words. Margaret, of course, learned of everything the next day, and, alone in the employee locker room, cleaning a window with a satisfied expression, she murmured, "They just need a little push." Meanwhile, Vanessa intensified her advances. Realizing that she couldn't take down Elena with false accusations alone, she made a risky alliance. She sought out Layla Matthews, Liam's ex-girlfriend, a stunning woman, heiress to an investment fund, who still harbored an unresolved obsession for him. Layla had never accepted being abandoned by someone who didn't care about fortune. When she learned that Liam was getting involved with a simple lawyer earning half a salary, she was furious. Vanessa promised her backstage access to the company, and with that, Layla showed up at the firm days later, strutting as if she were still part of the Harrison inner circle. She wore an extremely expensive necklace and said she had come to visit an old love. Rumors took over the building, and when Elena saw her for the first time, her eyes froze. Liam's past, until then shrouded in mystery, was knocking at the door, and this time it came wearing high heels and French perfume. Layla strutted through the corridors as if she owned the place. It was enough to say that she was a close friend of the Harrison family, for the most influential employees to line up to fawn over her. She cast looks of disdain at Elena whenever she could, making venomous comments. Disguised as smiles, "You must be very hard-working to get this far with so little." Elena, who was already fighting to maintain her reputation in the face of accusations, now had to deal with whispers that associated Layla with Liam and doubted the relationship between him and a simple lawyer. Margaret, upon seeing Layla in the office, frowned and approached her discreetly. "What do you want here, Layla?" The young woman replied with artificial sweetness. "I just came to see if Liam hasn't forgotten who he really is." Margaret narrowed her eyes. "He never has. But perhaps you never truly knew." The situation reached its breaking point when Vanessa convened another meeting with the partners, claiming to have discovered the supposed root of the leaked data, now with forged internal emails exchanged between Elena and an external contact. The atmosphere was tense. Elena was about to be suspended until the investigations concluded. Vanessa smiled with satisfaction as she handed the documents to the board. It was at that moment that Liam, seated at the back of the room, stood up. His tone was calm, but his presence filled the room with authority. "Excuse me, but before any decision is made, I think everyone here deserves to know the truth." A murmur ensued. Vanessa glared at him disdainfully. "With all due respect, intern, this is not your place." Liam walked to the front of the room, removed his badge and placed it on the table. "My full name is Liam Harrison, and I am not an intern. I am the new CEO of Harrison Medical and Legal." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Vanessa paled. Layla, who was watching the scene from an ajar door, widened her eyes. The board was in shock. "I had been working here undercover for the past few weeks at the request of my grandmother, Margaret Harrison," Liam continued. "We wanted to understand the true culture of the company, to know who acts ethically when they think no one is watching." He turned to Elena. "This woman, who you are about to punish unjustly, was the only person who demonstrated courage and dignity from day one." Elena was still dumbfounded. Margaret then entered the room, removing her cap and revealing her identity to the assembled crowd. "And I was here as a cleaning lady to see who treated the invisible with respect. Believe me, many failed." In light of the revelation, the board immediately suspended the process against Elena and ordered an internal investigation. In the following days, with the help of the IT team called in by Liam, it was discovered that the forged emails had been planted by Vanessa, under Layla's guidance, who even had illegal access to the company system. The evidence was forwarded to the internal lawyers. In a new meeting, this time to discuss disciplinary measures, Liam was direct. "Both of you violated the integrity of the firm. The punishment will be exemplary." Vanessa was fired for cause, and Layla had a criminal complaint filed against her, in addition to being officially banned from all Harrison Group units. As she left escorted by security, Layla cast one last look at Liam. "You chose wrong," he replied serenely. "No, for the first time, I chose right." After the storm, the office underwent a silent transformation. The employees, once immersed in rumors and appearances, now observed Elena with respect and with a sense of guilt. Some approached her, murmuring embarrassed apologies. Others, lacking the courage to face her directly, merely averted their eyes, acknowledging the error in silence. Elena, always elegant, harbored no resentment, but she also did not forget. She knew that trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. Margaret, for her part, continued to circulate the company in her cleaning lady uniform for a few more days, until she finally announced, with a sparkle in her eyes, that the mission was accomplished. From that moment on, she returned to her place as president, not as a distant figure, but as someone who knew every corner of the company from within. The relationship between Liam and Elena blossomed even more. No disguises, no lies, no official titles between them. What began as discreet glances now transformed into evident complicity. One afternoon, while walking through the administrative headquarters garden, Liam suddenly stopped, took Elena's hand, and said, "I want you to know that even if you had discovered who I was from the start, I would have done everything to win you over the..." "Same way." Elena smiled, but her eyes revealed a trace of pain. "Do you know what scared me the most? It wasn't the fact that you lied. It was the fear that all of it was just an experiment for you, that I was merely part of a plan." Liam gently pulled her closer. "You were the only reason the plan made sense." And there, amidst the golden autumn leaves, he knelt. "Will you marry me?" Elena, unable to contain a nervous laugh, replied with a single word, "Yes." The ceremony took place a few weeks Later, in a small botanical greenhouse on the outskirts of town. It was simple, intimate, and absolutely genuine. Elena wore a light dress, without glitters or extravagant veils, but one that reflected her essence, firm, gentle, and free. Liam, in a dark blue suit and with an enchanted look in his eyes, couldn't take his eyes off her. Margaret, dressed in floral tones and an elegant hat, made sure to hold the rings. The most moving moment came when Elena, already with tears in her eyes, shared part of her story during the reception. I grew up hearing that people like me can only get so far, that we might be good, but will never be enough to be among the greats. Today, looking at this man, at this family, I see that it was all a lie. A person's value is not in their surname, but in what they choose to do with the pain they carry. Later that night, seated on the deck of the country house where they would spend their honeymoon, Liam shared a long-held memory. "You know you saved me before, right?" Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" Liam smiled nostalgically. "When I was 14, I was at a summer camp. I was surrounded by some older boys. They knew I came from a rich family, and they wanted to provoke me. They pushed me around, threw my backpack into the lake, and then a short, fearless girl appeared, yelling at them as if she were 20. "You mess with him, you mess with me," she said, and the guys backed off. "That girl was you. I never forgot." Elena widened her eyes. "That you were that boy? My God." Liam nodded, holding her hand tightly. "That day I knew that one day I would want to marry someone like you. I just didn't know it would be exactly you." Time passed, and with it, the shadows left by injustice were replaced by new beginnings. Elena, now officially Elena Harrison, became a reference within the company, not for being the CEO's wife, but for her exemplary work, her firm leadership, and her humanity. She took over the legal department and began mentoring young lawyers, especially those coming from modest backgrounds like hers. "Talent does not have pedigree," she always said. The rooms that once whispered cruel jokes now echoed with words of respect. Margaret, for her part, continued to be a constant presence, offering advice sometimes harsh, sometimes affectionate, and making sure to remind everyone that the heart of the company is not at the top of the tower. It is in the way we treat those who clean the floor. Liam and Elena lived a relationship based on truth, with deep roots and branches that grew in all directions. They had silent nights, dinners filled with laughter, and also days of conflict, which they faced with maturity. One weekend, while walking through the neighborhood fair, Elena stopped in front of a stall selling children's clothes. She stood there silently for a few seconds, then picked up a small white onesie printed with stars. Liam, noticing, took her hand. "Is that it?" he asked, trying to contain his emotion. She just nodded, tears in her eyes. "You're going to be a father." He said nothing immediately. He just embraced her right there, amid the hustle and bustle of people. Margaret nearly exploded with joy when she received the news that night. "Finally, I was tired of being just the chairwoman of the board. Now I'll be a great-grandmother." And she danced around the room like a teenager. At the company, the announcement of Elena's pregnancy brought even more admiration from her colleagues. The woman who had once been ridiculed for not being up to par was now seen as an example of dignity and transformation. Many of those who had laughed now congratulated her sincerely. Liam, more reserved, remained steadfast to the promise made at the altar, to protect Elena from any shadow, but without taking her out of the light. In an internal conference, he declared, "My wife is my partner, and everything we have achieved here is thanks to her courage, not my position." Sincere applause followed, and even the former skeptics admitted they were witnessing a story that was not just about love, but about justice, courage, and reconciliation. One evening, now with her belly growing, Elena sat beside Margaret in the family home's garden. The lady was caressing a blanket that she had knit herself for her great-grandchild. "You know, Elena, I've been worried my whole life about the family legacy, but now I know I chose right." Elena smiled. "Why?" Margaret sighed. "Because our legacy is not in the signed contracts, nor in the buildings we have built. It is in the kind of love we teach our children. And you are going to teach my great-grandchild what it is to be strong without being cruel." what it is to be firm without losing tenderness. That night, as Liam watched the two women he loved the most talking under the stars, he felt that life, despite all the disguises, was finally where it should be, whole, true, and full of possibilities.